have now completed down-jump transition. Sirs and Sarahs, welcome to Rockhouse. Our king, Lord Kemtree, and the Council of Ruling Families hope you will enjoy your stay. The captain has engaged the in-system drive, and we will arrive at Rockhouse Major in approximately 12 hours. Schedules for planetary shuttles and shuttles to Rockhouse Minor are available on displays conveniently located around the ship. Those wishing to book passage to the Guerny Republic may proceed to Hub 3 for planets Huerin, Patchcock, Xavier. Proceed to Hub 2. The private lounge for the shuttle to Cerealis is located on Hub 4. Thank you, and welcome to the Familias Regnant.
The Serrano Legacy. Book 1. Hunting Party. Within the realm of the Familias Regnant and the regular space service that protects it, the name Serrano is synonymous with distinguished military service. But RSS Captain Heris Serrano, despite her previously spotless record, is forced to resign her commission in disgrace. Now, without a ship and crew, and unwilling to face the disapproval of her family, Heris finds employment as the captain of a small private yacht, the Sweet Delight.
Cecilia, it's not fair.
Heris took in the situation at a glance. One tall, angular, gray-haired woman, her employer. 3 sulky, overdressed young men that Heris would not have had on her ship, and their obvious girlfriends, all rumpled, and one still passed out on a lavender couch that mashed the plush carpet and walls. Streaks of vomit stained its smooth velour. As she came through the barrier, Heris smiled her normal good morning bridge smile at her employer.
Good morning, milady.
The youths, all but the unconscious snorer on the couch, stared. Heris could feel her ears going hot and ignored them, still smiling at Cecilia Artemisia Veronica Penelope, heiress of more titles than anyone needed, let alone more money. That lady was restored to instant, unruffled calm by the appearance of someone to whom it meant something. "Ah, Captain Serrano, how nice to have you aboard. Our departure will be delayed, but only briefly." She looked at the chestnut-haired youth. "Until my nephew is settled. I presume your things are already aboard?"
Sent ahead, milady.
"Good. Then Bates will show you to your quarters." Heris's new employer is the somewhat eccentric Lady Cecilia de Marctos, wealthy descendant of one of the ruling families. After whipping the crew of the Sweet Delight into shape, Heris plots a course for Lady Cecilia's first destination, the planet Cerealis, and the estate of Lord Thornbuckle, also known as Bunny. Lady Cecilia, despite her advanced age and disdain of rejuvenation treatments, is a horsewoman of renown, and she is anxious to arrive in time for the beginning of fox hunting season. En route, Lady Cecilia forges a pact with Heris. She will teach Heris to ride, and Heris will school Lady Cecilia in the operation and maintenance of her yacht. Upon arriving at the estate, the young people, especially Cecilia's nephew Ronnie, grow impatient with the rigors of fox hunting and decide to strike out on their own. They commandeer a flitter and fly to a nearby island. George saw the danger first.
Look out!
Ronnie looked back at him, wondering what kind of game they were playing back there. Then he saw it, just before it struck, an odd shape trailing a line of orange smoke. The flitter jerked itself out of his control, bouncing up and sideways, and a good half of the readouts went red. Ronnie put all his strength into willing the flitter not to crash into a lump of trees nearer shore than the rest. When Ronnie, George, Rafa, and Bubbles recover from the crash landing, they are approached by the people who shot them down, convicts imprisoned on the island as prey for a group of manhunters. The organizer of the blood sport is Admiral Lepescu, the man who ruined Heris Serrano's career. The convicts are former members of her crew. They split the young people up to increase the chances that at least 2 of them will survive long enough to be rescued. After many harrowing experiences, the 4 young people are reunited in a cave and are shocked to discover that one of the hunters is Prince Gerald, their old schoolmate, and of course, the son of their king. To their collective horror, Lepescu orders Gerald to shoot his friends. Heris stared, just able to make out Ronnie, Bubbles, and Rafa. But who was that 4th young man with the extravagant mustache and a gleam of earring?
I won't do it, and I think you'll find it impossible to explain my disappearance.
Heris aligned her sights and shifted a little to clear Ronnie. It was at best a tricky shot. The ricochets would be wicked. Heris rose from her careful crouch and walked light-footed across the cave to Lepescu's body. Not body yet, for he was alive, though mortally wounded. She looked down at him warily. He might have other weapons.
You...
She could not think what to say. All the clever retorts she remembered from history crumbled and blew away in the wind of her anger, and it came to her that she did not need to say much under the circumstances.
Yes. Commander Serrano, with all due respect.
Ronnie and his friends return home, not much older, but infinitely wiser. Cecilia is tasked with bringing Prince Gerald back to his father aboard her yacht, with Captain Serrano still at the helm, and her former RSS crew serving under her. Book 2. Sporting Chance. En route to Rockhouse Major aboard the Sweet Delight, Ronnie approaches Lady Cecilia and Captain Serrano with an astonishing discovery. The prince, a registered embryo, the product of genetic engineering and the best schools, is much stupider than Ronnie remembers. He convinces the 2 women that something is wrong, and Cecilia promises to approach the king about it. At Rockhouse, Cecilia goes to the king, but he dismisses her suspicions. Word of the audience gets to Lorenza, sister of a royal minister. She is skilled with poisons, and she has always hated Cecilia. In the meantime, Heris goes to the shipyard to get the Sweet Delight a much-needed refitting and redecoration. She is awakened one night by an urgent call from Ronnie.
Captain Serrano,
What's wrong? Is your aunt...
she may die, they said. She just fell down. She was breathing oddly, and the doctors think she's had a massive stroke.
Heris found it hard to think. She had anticipated some trouble, but not this.
Where is she? Where are you?
She's at St. Cyril's, and I'm at home, at my parents' house. That's where it happened. My mother's at the hospital. She said to stay here and out of the way. She didn't tell me to tell you, but I thought you should know.
Thank you. You're right that I needed to know.
Cecilia is blind and paralyzed, and is deemed to be permanently disabled. Consequently, her will is executed, and her family is shocked to discover that she has left her yacht to Heris. Heris is just as shocked as they are, but to her dismay, she is now under suspicion of attempting to kill Cecilia to get the ship. Cecilia's family contests the will, the ship is tied up in probate, and to complicate matters more, the king summons Heris to an audience. He fears his son Gerald has been poisoned, and he asks Heris to steal the Sweet Delight and take his son to high-tech medical facilities in the Guerny Republic. The mission is further complicated when it is discovered that there are several clones of the prince, but Heris goes through with the theft anyway. As always, cementing the responsibility, she made the move herself. flat down on the board. The main drives answered smoothly, and the Sweet Delight, bouncing like a leaf in a rapid, skipped out of her plotted course. They needed another 10,000 kilometers. She sweated, watching the plots. It should take a few seconds to register. Someone should be tapping the screens, wondering what had happened to the plots. Then it would take time to transmit the message. No one had the right firing angle for missiles. No one could intercept with tractors before they got their critical distance. At the edge of her vision, in front of Oblo, the counter ran down the long chain of numbers.
General warning. Vessel off course in Sector Red Alpha 2. All traffic alert. Do not change course without direct orders. Stand by for traffic control override.
We're clear in theory.
Then let's surprise them.
With the new control systems, she had only one button to push. In the meantime, Ronnie and Brun have rescued Lady Cecilia from a long-term care facility in, of all things, a hot air balloon. She is taken to one of her estates for rehabilitation and finally undergoes rejuvenation treatments to restore her health. Now a vigorous 40 years old, she regains control of her affairs and sets about making Lorenza pay for poisoning her. In the process, the corrupt government of the Familias regnant falls, and a new era begins. Book 3, Winning Colors. The new government of the Familias regnant, led by Brun's father, Lord Thornbuckle, has inherited a host of problems. A neighboring system, the benignity of the compassionate hand, known informally as the Black Scratch, is becoming increasingly belligerent, and invasion seems imminent. Adulterated rejuvenation drugs are weakening the regular space service, and the space service itself is becoming increasingly fractious and vulnerable to infiltration by the benignity. Cecilia, meanwhile, has abandoned politics to pursue her passion for horses. She and Heris travel to Xavier, a frontier planet that specializes in horse breeding, to acquire bloodstock. But they continue to be lightning rods for trouble. Xavier's strategic location attracts the attention of the benignity, and Sweet Delight is under-equipped to repel their attack. Heris's plea for help from the regular space service garners only 3 ships, all commanded by traitors in thrall to the enemy, except for one. Jig Esme Suiza had survived the battle for control of Despite, and after Major Xavier finally died, she ranked all the others. The small band of ensigns and junior lieutenants who had been the nucleus of the Loyalists. Now she faced the grizzled, balding senior NCO, Master Chief Vesek, who had just called her captain and asked for orders. She didn't want to go back. She had no combat experience. She could get them all killed without helping Serrano at all. She had been a very green ensign, shy, afraid that everyone could see through her shiny insignia and new uniform to the fear, and she had stumbled and dropped her duffel right at the feet of a couple of senior officers waiting to enter the lift.
They get younger every year.
The other had picked up her scattered data cubes.
Ah, your specialty's scan technology? Good. We've got an excellent chief. You'll like him.
She had never forgotten that face. She had gotten in a disgraceful, so her commander said, fight with another Jig when Heris Serrano left the fleet, defending her. And she had seen that face again, trying to talk Hearn into turning around. Xavier had played the tape for any doubters among the mutineers.
We're going back.
Vesek looked startled, but didn't argue.
I want the fastest possible transit back into Xavier. They can't wait.
Esme still didn't want to go back, any more than she'd wanted to be part of a mutiny, to have Xavier's blood and organs splashed into her face, to have this command. But it was her ship now, and she would do what she had to.
Prepare for battle.
No one argued. No one bothered her at all. She still had no idea how she was going to fight, but she would. With luck, skill, and the return of the patrol ship Despite at a critical moment, the enemy is defeated. Heris and her crew regain their commissions with the regular space service, and Heris is reconciled with her family. Book 4. Once a Hero. In spite of her heroic actions in the battle for Xavier, Lieutenant J.G. Esme Suiza finds herself in front of a court-martial. In the eyes of the RSS, she is still technically a mutineer. After much investigation and testimony, however, she is exonerated of all charges and given some leave time before going to her next assignment. Esme heads home to the planet Altiplano with mixed feelings. Her childhood there was troubled, the result of the death of her mother and recurring nightmares. And her formal, distant father has always disapproved of her choice to attend the Space Academy. When she arrives at the family estate, she is given Altiplano's highest honor. But during a conversation with an old family friend, she receives a devastating shock.
It would have been better, I always thought, if they'd told you. At least when you got old enough. Being as the man was dead and couldn't hurt anyone again, least of all you. Bad enough for it to happen at all, no matter who did it. The rape of a child. Sickening. But to have it be one of ours.
Esme fixed on the one thing she could stand to know.
I didn't know he was dead.
Well, your father couldn't tell you that without bringing up the rest of it, could he? He hoped you'd forget the whole thing, or think it was just a fever dream.
He'd said it was a fever dream. He'd said it was over now, that she'd always be safe. He'd said he wasn't angry at her. Yet his anger had hovered around her, a vast cloud, dangerous, blinding her mind as the smoke had blinded her eyes.
You're sure?
That the bastard died? Oh yes. I have no doubt at all.
You killed him?
It was that or your father's career. Officers can't just kill their men, even animals who rape children. But to wait, to charge him, that would have brought you into it, and none of us wanted that. Better for me to do it and take my lumps. Not that there was anything worse than a stiff chewing out at the end of it. Extenuating circumstances.
I'm glad to know that.
I always said you should have been told. Not that I talked about it, you understand. I said it to myself, I mean. It was no use arguing with your father. And after all, you were his daughter.
Don't worry about it.
Esme confronts her father about his concealment of her childhood trauma and leaves the planet with the rift between them unresolved. She travels to her next assignment on board the deep space repair ship Kosciuszko, or Kos. Esme continues her training and performs her duties, even striking up a friendship with Ensign Baron Serrano, cousin to Heris. However, unbeknownst to the officers and crew of the Kos, there are civilian saboteurs aboard, paid by the aptly named Blood Horde to disable the self-destruct so that the ship can be captured and the crew killed or enslaved. The invasion commences in the form of a damaged RSS ship, booby-trapped by the Blood Horde with a mine set to explode when the ship is taken into Kos's repair bay. Esme herself discovers the mine and averts disaster, but undercover Blood Horde commandos, concealed among the crew of the damaged ship, manage to take over the bridge of the Kos and isolate sections of the ship from each other. One of the casualties of the invasion is Baron Serrano, who is captured and tortured. Esme and several of the officers go outside the hull in an effort to reach a section from which they can mount a counterattack, only to find themselves in an impossible situation. Kosciuszko bowled its way into the jump transition with an uncanny slithering lurch and a vibration that ground its way through Esme's boots into her sinuses. The stars were gone. She could see nothing beyond the readouts in her helmet, and they looked very strange indeed. Her comm was silent, as dark a silence as the visible dark around her. Something bumped the back of her helmet. She turned cautiously. It had to be one of the others. It bumped again.
Radios don't work. Have to touch heads. Again.
Esme switched on her helmet light and watched in amazement as the light reached slowly, down like the extrusion of a semi-solid adhesive from its tube. Unfortunately, it illuminated no helpful markers, nothing to suggest which way an airlock might be.
Suiza!
Here! She dipped her head. The bar of light from her helmet bent slowly, undulating with the movement. She handed the end of her line to the gloved hand that appeared in the light.
I know someone who would take one look at that and spend the next month in a math trance trying to explain it.
The group survives their sortie through hyperspace, enters the ship, and makes creative use of materials and facilities available on the Kos to fight the enemy within and without. Esme again demonstrates her talent for command by commandeering an enemy ship and using it to help defeat the Blood Horde. Esme can no longer deny her talent for leadership, and when she encounters the injured and mentally traumatized Baron, she can no longer deny her strong feelings for him. With each other's support, they begin the process of healing. Book 5. Rules of Engagement. Now that Esme Suiza has changed from technical to command track, she transfers to the fleet training facility on Copper Mountain. There, she encounters Lord Thornbuckle's daughter Brun, formerly known as Bubbles. Brun aspires to a fleet career, despite the objections of her father, who is now Speaker of the Grand Council, and has a deep admiration for serious, dedicated Esme. Esme is at first charmed by Brun's joie de vivre, but when Brun seems to be flirting with Baron, the sparks fly and set off an explosion from Esme. Her hateful words propel Brun away from Copper Mountain and earn Esme a severe reprimand for disrespect to the Speaker's daughter and reassignment to the search and rescue vessel Shrike as its executive officer. As Brun travels home, she and the crew of her ship stumble upon the hostile takeover of the commercial hauler Elias Madero by religious extremists of the New Texas God-fearing militia. The hauler is unknowingly carrying stolen nuclear warheads, which the New Texans intend to take for themselves. Brun is captured, her crew is slaughtered, and it is only then that her real nightmare begins. He looked Brun full in the face.
You are thinking still that you will be rescued, that you can go back to your abominations and perversions. You do not yet believe that your old life is over, but you will soon. You have already spoken the last words you will ever speak.
What does that mean? Are they going to kill me after all?
Brun stared back, defiant.
You will be used as you deserve, and as a mute breeder, you will be no threat, no matter what.
Brun felt a shock as her mind caught up with that.
I see you understand, that much at least. You're not used to that, not being able to plead and beg and wheedle your way around your weakling father or the other men you've whored with, but that's over. The voice of the heathen will be heard no more. Yea, the tongues of those who know not God will be silenced. And as the holy words also say, women shall keep silence before men in respect and submission. You were born in sin and abomination, but you will live in the service of God Almighty. When it is time, when we choose, you will sleep. And when you awake, you will have no voice.
Her body jerked in spite of herself. She struggled, as she had not struggled before, knowing it was useless. Brun fought herself to stillness, hating the tears that stung her eyes, that ran down her face.
We'll put you away now to think about that. I want you to know ahead of time, to understand. For this is part of the training you will receive, to learn that you have no power, and no man will listen to you. You are silenced, slut, as women should be silent.
It could not be happening. Not to her. Not to the daughter of the Speaker of the Grand Council. Things like this happened, if they happened, in dull history books, in times long past or places far away. Not to her. Muted and helpless, Brun is gang-raped repeatedly until she becomes pregnant with twins. The militia takes her back to the planet Our Texas. Lord Thornbuckle blames Esme for Brun's disappearance and capture, and to complicate matters even more, Esme's grandmother dies on Altiplano and names her as Land Bride, steward of the Suiza lands and all who depend on them. Esme goes home and endures the formal ceremony investing her as Land Bride, but her cousin helps her realize that her heart is with the fleet and with Baron. She leaves Altiplano and manages to reconcile with both. A mission is launched to rescue Brun before she can be impregnated again by her captors. Brun escapes imprisonment with the help of a foreign agent, taking with her Hazel, a young girl from the Elias Madero. They manage to get off-planet in the ship of another agent, but he intends to turn them over to the New Texans. Brun kills him and pilots the ship to a nearby derelict space station. One of the RSS vessels taking part in the rescue is Shrike, Esme's ship, and she volunteers to command a task force that boards the station just as New Texans ram it with their own ship. Esme, in space armor, and Brun, in an airtight gurney, are ejected from the station into space.
Lieutenant!
Esme hoped that was the first call.
Suiza, here!
Lieutenant, have you got the gurney?
Yes, she's alive. Air's flowing.
What about you? Somebody thought they saw a plume.
Another look at her helmet readouts was not so reassuring. Her own air was down, and the gauge was sagging visibly.
Low, and going down.
The blast may have pulled your air feed loose. Can you check it?
Not without letting go of the gurney, and I'm not going to.
We'll have a sled to you in less than 10 minutes.
What is your air?
3 minutes. If it doesn't leak any faster.
Is Brun conscious?
Yes. She's looking at me, but she can't see me. My helmet shield's still mirrored.
I'm going to transmit to her. Tell her to see if she can stop your leak.
No, it's too dangerous.
It'll be more dangerous if you pass out and can't help guide the sled in.
Esme could see the change in Brun's expression. Then Brun wriggled around, wrapping one arm in the straps waving from the gurney, and reaching around behind Esme. Brun wriggled more. The air gauge quit dropping, stabilized at 8 minutes.
8 minutes.
She's got the luck, that one.
Mahari did not say whether 8 minutes would be enough. Esme comforted herself with the knowledge that 1 minute of oxygen deprivation was within anyone's capacity. Then Brun reached up with her webbing-wrapped arm and pushed up Esme's mirror shield before Esme could bring an arm in to stop her. Her eyes widened. Then she grinned, as mischievous and merry a grin as Esme had ever seen on her face. Esme did her best to hold still, even as her air ran out, and the hunger for oxygen overtook her, urging her to run, struggle, fight her way out of the dark, choking tunnel that was squeezing the life out of her. Esme survives hypoxia, and the fleet jumps into the system in time to blow up the New Texans' warships. Baron leads a planet-side mission to rescue the other children taken from the Elias Madero, and narrowly averts an attempt by the New Texans to set off their stolen warheads. Baron, Brun, and Esme finally reconcile in a flurry of attention from the media. Book 6, Change of Command. In the Familias Regnant, times are troubled. Lord Thornbuckle is assassinated. Most believe that the New Tex militia is responsible for his death, but Cecilia has suspicions that a political faction in favor of unlimited rejuvenations may have had a hand in the attack. In the regular space service, master sergeants that have had rejuvenation begin to show alarming signs of dementia. There are suspicions among the ranks that inferior rejuvenation drugs are being foisted upon the fleet, while the better drugs are reserved for the wealthy. No one suspects that the Benignity, fearing incursions from the Familias and the fleet that protects them, have been adulterating the drugs in order to weaken the RSS. In the Grand Council of the Familias, Hobart Consoline, the new speaker, alienates the rest of the council with ill-advised appointments and outrageous legislation. His remedy for dealing with the problem of incapacitated senior NCOs in the fleet is to order that senior officers who have had rejuvenation immediately take medical leave. Meanwhile, on the fleet planet Copper Mountain, the military prison has a new commandant. Pilar Bacarian was a protege of the infamous Admiral Lepescu of manhunting fame, and she sees an opportunity to take weapons of mass destruction from a nearby R&D facility, using the prison inmates as shock troops. But Corporal Gellin Mahari has his suspicions, and when he is attacked, thrown off a sea cliff, and left for dead, he knows he has to take action. Once in the mouth of the tube, he risked a brief flash of his torch. There it was. And there was Commander Bacarian, a weapon leveled at his chest.
I thought they might have underestimated you. I didn't.
Gellin stared at the weapon.
I will be glad to take your ears. I might even send one to your family.
The thought of Methlyn's reaction if she got one of her little brother's ears in the mail made him grin in spite of his fear.
Do that. Yeah!
Gellin dove toward her. Gellin pivoted on one suit grapple and slammed both booted feet into her side. He felt the crunch of bone, but she wasn't dead. She would have more than one weapon. He scrambled towards her, raking with the suit grapples. A thin red beam appeared, the rangefinder of her next weapon. Gellin felt something with one glove and yanked hard. Something slammed into his shoulder. Gellin swung elbows, knees, feet, and took hard blows himself, barely softened by the suit. Then the blows weakened. He hit again and again. Gellin didn't know if she was dead or feigning, or if she had been alone. He fumbled around, trying to find the torch, but finally gave up and used the suit's headlamp. His suit grapples glistened, brilliant red in the light. He had torn her face off in that last struggle. An ear dangled from one grapple tip. He shook it free.
She took years. I am a Mahari.
He was a Mahari who had killed an officer who was, as far as anyone knew, his legitimate superior merely doing her duty. He couldn't just go tell the sergeant about it. Not this time.
Methlyn said there would be days like this.
She had never told him he might have to murder his commander and then figure out how to explain it. Mahari escapes and is rescued at sea. He helps the senior scientists at the weapons facility hold off the mutineers until the fleet can be notified of the danger. The fleet is mobilized to counteract the mutiny, interrupting Esme and Baron's engagement party, just as Baron's grandmother, Admiral Vida Serrano, reveals that there is ancient enmity between the Suizas and Serranos that may stand in the way of their marriage. But they take advantage of the confusion of mobilization to get married anyway. Hobart Consoline's paranoia and reckless policies have made him dangerous in the eyes of the leader of the Benignity, and in the course of a fencing lesson, Hobart is beheaded by a Benignity agent. Book 7, Against the Odds. Even though they have managed to get word to the fleet about the mutiny, Gellin Mahari and the weapons scientists are still stranded in the research facility on Copper Mountain. Through a series of ruses, they manage to get aboard an attack shuttle with a prototype cloaking device and deceive the mutineers into believing that the shuttle is destroyed. After a short honeymoon, Baron and Esme part company to take different assignments. On the way to her next post, Esme is suddenly taken into custody by fleet security and told that she has been kicked out of the service by authority of one Admiral Serrano. The reason? Her status as a land bride prohibits her from having fleet rank or marrying a fleet officer. Unable to travel on a military vessel, she books passage on a commercial freighter to Rockhouse to plead her case at fleet headquarters. On Rockhouse, the government is reeling from the assassination of Hobart Consoline and the accidental death of his Secretary of State, Peter Orgiemos, during a fencing match with Lord Thornbuckle's widow, Miranda. Peter is the man Cecilia suspected of being complicit in Lord Thornbuckle's death, and she finds evidence that Peter's death was no accident. When Cecilia confronts Miranda with the evidence, she admits that she killed Peter in retaliation for Bunny's death and feels no remorse. Cecilia convinces Miranda to flee with her to the Guerny Republic in her small spaceship Pounce, But en route, the ship is forced out of FTL flight by the mass of the Bonar Tig, the flagship of the mutineers. Cecilia and Miranda are taken prisoner and thrown in a cell with other loyalist women who are being kept as prey for future manhunts. Miranda and Cecilia are put to work cleaning latrines, but they plan and bide their time, and using Miranda's fencing skills, finally overpower their guards and organize an escape. When the mutineers close in as the prisoners desperately try to board a shuttle, Miranda stays behind to hold them off, sacrificing herself for the sake of the others' freedom. The escapees on board the shuttle manage to launch it away from the Bonar Tig, but find that the only one among them with any flying experience is Cecilia. Cecilia changed the ship's attitude, then advanced what she hoped was the throttle. The Delta V changed abruptly and then increased.
It's the Indefatigable! Can you tell if they're loyalists or mutineers? They just blew up Bonar Tig. I'd say that makes them loyalists.
That could be a mistake. Or they may think like you, Cecilia.
Whoever it is, they'll have scan that can pick us up, right? Well, maybe. There's a lot of noise from the ship blowing up. If we hailed them...
And if they're the wrong ship, then we're in worse trouble.
We can at least be listening.
Dusty turned on the receivers and the automatic tuners.
Shuttlecraft, identify yourself or we will fire upon you.
Don't fire! Who are you?
RSS Indefatigable. Serrano commanding. Stand down your weapons.
Weapons? What weapons? Do we have weapons? Combat shuttles do, but I don't know anything about them. Maybe it's these switches.
Don't touch that. Tell them our problem.
We don't have a real pilot aboard. We don't know which switches are which.
What do you have?
Well, a civilian who holds a surface-to-orbit license for a small civilian craft. We used the automatic launch to get out with.
Just stay where you are. Don't touch anything. We'll match course.
Cecilia sat back. Against all odds, they'd escaped the mutineers, escaped the destruction of the ship they'd been on for however many days, and she was still alive. Miranda, she did not want to let the others know how merciful Miranda's death had been. Cecilia, for her service to the RSS, is made an honorary admiral. Esme arrives on Rockhouse and finds her father there with all the paperwork necessary to transfer the title of land bride from Esme to her cousin Lucy. With the help of her father, who has had experience with military red tape, and Brun, who has political clout, and Admiral Vida Serrano, who was not the admiral who had her cashiered, Esme is reinstated as a fleet officer and receives her own command, the patrol ship Rascal. Brun has been representing her family in the council and finds that she has a natural ability in the political arena. Victor Barraclough, the head of her sept, asks to see her, and to her astonishment, offers to turn his mantle of power over to her. But there is a condition. She must refuse rejuvenation and live only a normal lifespan. Brun accepts his offer, and at the next meeting of the council, orchestrates a vote among the members that makes her the new speaker. Heris and Esme are assigned to a battle group commanded by Admiral Minor Arash Lavadi, an old friend of Heris. He is revealed to be not only a former associate of the infamous Admiral Lepescu, but a benignity agent as well. When his flagship, a battlecruiser, suddenly leaves the battle group and heads for the border of Benignity space, Esme pursues him in her patrol ship. Heris, too, comes to convince Lavadi not to turn his ship over to the enemy. But old resentments come to the surface, and finally, in the end, tragedy cannot be averted. The Serrano legacy concludes with a celebration. Heris has been made an admiral, and her family and comrades in arms are there to fete her in style. But in the tradition of the fleet, they pause to remember those who have gone before them.
This for the friends we had of old,
friends for a lifetime's love and cheer. This for the friends who come no more.